The rain began as a fine mist, blurring the windshield in soft silver streaks. Eric adjusted the wipers and leaned forward, trying to make out the stretch of road ahead. It was supposed to be a simple late-night drive, 2 hours out of town, a quiet backroad shortcut he had taken before. But tonight, the forest pressed in too close, its branches arched like rib bones over the asphalt, and the sound of rain on the roof carried a strange, nervous rhythm. The GPS had already failed 15 minutes ago, frozen on a screen of static. He told himself it was nothing, but the silence of the woods on either side felt heavier with each passing mile. The road forked without warning. No signposts, no lights, only the glow of his headlights splitting into 2 black corridors swallowed by the trees. Eric slowed to a crawl, squinting through the fogged glass. Left looked narrower, swallowed by vines and crooked trunks, while right dipped slightly downhill into a shadowed gully. He hesitated, chewing his lip. He didn't remember this turn at all. The road he knew was straight. Something in his gut whispered that he should turn back, but when he glanced into the rearview mirror, the road behind looked just as strange, twisting, darker than he remembered. He chose the right fork. His tires rolled onto the slick pavement with a quiet hiss, and almost instantly, the soundscape shifted. The rain softened. The air inside the car grew warmer, heavier. He flicked on the radio, hoping for static, a weather report, anything, but the speakers hummed low, like a deep breath exhaled directly into the cabin. He jerked the dial off and gripped the wheel tighter. The silence pressed closer, and with it, the distinct sensation of being watched. He couldn't see beyond the beam of his headlights, yet he felt eyes tracking his every move. Another mile passed. Then his headlights swept across something that made his stomach clench. Figures. Dozens of them, standing motionless at the tree-line on both sides of the road. They weren't close, but they weren't far enough either, human shapes, tall and uneven, their silhouettes jagged against the fog. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Their heads all tilted at the exact same angle, following the car as it crept by. Eric's breath quickened. His instinct screamed to hit the gas, but the narrow road felt like it was closing in, forcing him to stay at a crawl. By the time he rounded the next bend, his hands were slick on the steering wheel. The figures were gone. The trees stood empty, shadows whispering in the rain. For a moment, relief rushed through him, but it didn't last. Because when he glanced in the mirror again, they were there. Every single one of them, standing in the middle of the road behind his car, heads tilted, bodies perfectly still. And as the mirror fogged with his shallow breath, he swore he saw their arms start to rise. Eric blinked hard, convinced his eyes were lying to him. He rubbed at the fogged glass of the mirror with his sleeve, but when his reflection cleared, the figures were still there. Dozens of them, crowding the wet asphalt, their heads tilted at that same unnatural angle. His chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow gasps. No, 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 he whispered to himself, forcing his foot onto the gas pedal. The engine roared, tires spitting rainwater, but the further he drove, the heavier the air inside the car felt, like he was carrying all of them with him. The road twisted into another bend, and he nearly slammed the brakes. A shape stood directly in the middle of his lane. Unlike the others, this one was closer, too close. The beam of his headlights carved out its details, wet clothing clinging to a frail body, arms dangling too long at its sides. Its head snapped upright at the light, the motion sharp, almost mechanical. Eric's grip tightened until his knuckles blanched. He swerved around it, wheels screeching against slick pavement, heart hammering as the forest swallowed him again. He didn't dare look back this time. Inside the car, something shifted. It was small, almost imperceptible, like the creak of leather in the passenger seat. Eric's eyes darted sideways, but the seat was empty, seatbelt dangling loose, nothing there. Yet the faint smell of damp earth filled the cabin, rich and cloying, as if someone had dragged a soaked coat inside. His chest constricted. He flicked on the dome light, but it barely glowed, a sickly orange pulse, before flickering out. That was when he heard it, a wet exhale, slow and deliberate, from the back seat. He froze. His mind screamed not to look, but his body betrayed him. The mirror tilted down, showing the back row. Empty. Nothing but shadows and the reflection of his own terrified eyes. Still, the sound came again, closer this time, hot against his ear. He jolted forward, slamming the pedal harder, speed climbing as the road blurred into streaks of black and silver. The forest whipped past, but no matter how fast he went, he couldn't shake the sensation that something unseen had settled itself inside with him. The dashboard lights flickered. The fuel gauge dropped sharply, needle slamming toward empty. Eric cursed under his breath. He had filled the tank less than an hour ago. Panic clawed at his ribs, and in his peripheral vision, the passenger seat seemed heavier, as though a weight had sunk into the fabric. He gritted his teeth, forcing his eyes on the road, but a single truth pounded in his skull with each racing heartbeat: he wasn't alone anymore. Eric's knuckles throbbed from the way he clenched the wheel, every muscle in his arms screaming from the tension. The road ahead unraveled in endless black ribbons, no signs, no lights, no hint of civilization. He hadn't seen another car in over an hour, at least, that's what he told himself. Deep down, a quieter thought insisted that time had stopped moving altogether. The rain seemed to fall in the same rhythm, repeating the same pattern against the windshield again and again, like a broken record he couldn't escape. The radio clicked on by itself. Eric's hand shot toward the dial, but before he could touch it, a low whisper slid from the speakers, just one syllable at first, stretched too thin to be human. Then another. Soon the static wove itself into something worse, his own voice. He froze, hearing himself speak words he hadn't said. "Don't look back." The tone was fractured, hollow, as though it had been recorded years ago and left to rot. His heart jolted, and he slammed the radio off. Silence swallowed the car again, but it was no longer clean silence. It was loaded, buzzing, waiting. The smell of damp earth grew stronger, choking, like he had driven straight into a freshly opened grave. He yanked the window down, desperate for air, but what rushed in wasn't rain-soaked freshness. It was warmer, sour, carrying something metallic underneath. The sound of breathing rose again, this time from the passenger seat. Eric didn't look. He couldn't. He fixed his eyes on the line where his headlights dissolved into fog, whispering to himself, "It's not real. It's not real." But then the window controls sparked. The glass screeched upward on its own, trapping him inside with the smell, with the sound. The wipers slowed, dragging across the glass like claws. For a split second, the headlights dimmed, and in that momentary lapse, he thought he saw something reflected in the windshield, the faint outline of a figure sitting beside him, head bowed, hair dripping wet onto the dashboard. He blinked hard, and it was gone. Only his pale face stared back at him in the glass. The road narrowed, twisting tighter, as if funneling him towards something inevitable. The air inside the cabin was unbearable now, heavy and wet, forcing each breath through his lungs like mud. His fingers hovered above the door lock controls, but he couldn't bring himself to press them. Some part of him knew it didn't matter anymore. The thing inside the car didn't need doors. It had already let itself in. The steering wheel twisted violently in David's hands, as though the car itself was fighting against him. The fog outside thickened until the world beyond the windshield was gone, swallowed whole. It felt like he was driving through nothing, the road erased beneath the tires. The car shook, rattling so hard the mirrors trembled, and from every direction came that layered chorus, "You can't go back. You can't go back." A deafening crack split the air as the roof tore open like paper. The passenger dropped into the seat beside David, his body folding unnaturally through the jagged hole. His grin stretched from ear to ear, skin tearing at the edges, but no blood followed, just an emptiness, a void that pulsed beneath. His eyes burned brighter now, hollow orbs filled with shifting light. "You've carried me far enough," he rasped, though his voice filled every corner of the car, vibrating through the glass. David screamed, jerking the wheel wildly, but the road was gone. The headlights revealed nothing, no trees, no fog, just an endless black expanse stretching in all directions. Panic gripped his chest. He wasn't driving anymore. The car floated in nothing, tires spinning against air, yet the engine roared louder than ever. "This isn't real. This isn't real," he shouted, slamming his fists against the dash. The passenger moved closer, impossibly close, until his face hovered inches from David's. "It's as real as you allow it to be," he whispered. Then his hand slid across the console, long fingers wrapping around the gear shift. With a sickening snap, he wrenched it backward. The car screamed in protest, metal grinding as though tearing itself apart. David's vision blurred, the dashboard lights flickering and twisting into symbols he couldn't recognize. The hum from the radio exploded into a roar, the overlapping voices finally merging into one, deeper, darker, commanding, "Bring us through." The windshield cracked down the middle, spiderwebbing as something began to push from the other side. Not fog. Not a person. Something massive, clawed and writhing, straining to break through. David clamped his hands over his ears, tears streaming down his face, as the passenger leaned back with a satisfied grin. "Almost there," he whispered. "Almost home." Eric's breath fogged the windshield faster than the wipers could clear the rain. His pulse thundered so violently that it blurred into the hum of the straining engine. He tried to keep his eyes locked on the road, but his peripheral vision betrayed him. The passenger seat sagged lower, its outline unmistakably shaped by something unseen. His mind clawed for excuses, water weight, faulty springs, anything, but then the seatbelt clicked. The sound was crisp, metallic, final. Something had strapped itself in that he could no longer pretend. His gaze slipped sideways, and for a fleeting second, the shape resolved into something human. A face, or at least the suggestion of one, pale and bloated, skin stretched thin and glistening as though waterlogged. Long strands of dripping hair clung to its cheeks, and its head hung unnaturally low, chin nearly buried in its chest. Eric's heart lurched violently, and his vision swam. He snapped his eyes back to the road, but the image burned itself into his brain. He wasn't alone, not anymore. The temperature inside the car plummeted. His breath came in frantic clouds, each exhale snatched away by a strange draft that seemed to come from nowhere. The dashboard clock began to spin, digits flickering through impossible hours, until they blurred into nonsense. The radio sputtered alive again, this time emitting a low moan that vibrated through the seat cushions. The sound wasn't coming from the speakers, it was resonating from the thing beside him. Eric's hands slipped on the wheel as sweat slicked his palms. He dared another glance, and this time, the passenger's head turned slightly toward him. Not fully, not yet, but enough to show the gaping hollowness where its eyes should have been. Water trickled from those empty sockets, seeping down its cheeks in steady rivulets. The car jolted as his tires clipped the edge of the road, dragging him back into the present. He corrected too sharply, nearly skidding into the trees, but forced the vehicle straight again, knuckles white and trembling that he wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure's hand twitched, slow, deliberate, and rose to rest on the dashboard, leaving a smear of dark moisture across the plastic. Each drop that fell from its fingers landed with a weight too heavy for water, vibrating through the floorboards. Eric's thoughts fractured. He knew one thing with dreadful certainty: if it turned fully toward him, if he saw its face in full, he would never make it out of this road alive. The fuel light glared red, pulsing like a warning heartbeat on the dash. Eric's throat was raw from the shallow, frantic breaths he forced past his lips. He couldn't look at the thing seated beside him, not again. Instead, he fixed his gaze on the dark tunnel of road ahead and whispered a prayer that something, anything, human would appear. A gas station. A town. A single porch light. His words trembled, but the silence outside swallowed them whole. Then, impossibly, headlights. Faint at first, then brighter, cresting the hill ahead. Eric's chest tightened with relief so sharp it hurt. Another car. Civilization. He flicked his brights, honked, desperate to be seen. The vehicle slowed, its beams cutting through the fog, revealing the boxy outline of an old truck. He nearly sobbed with joy. For the first time in hours, he felt tethered to reality again. He slowed, preparing to wave the driver down, already rehearsing the words, "Help me. Please, help me," but as the truck rolled closer, something was wrong. The beams didn't flare properly, as though the lights themselves were drowning in the mist. The engine made no sound, not even the faintest growl of gears. And then he saw the cab. Empty. No driver at the wheel. No silhouette behind the glass. The truck crawled forward at a steady pace, headlights boring into him, yet utterly hollow inside. His relief curdled into dread. He slammed the wheel and veered aside, skidding as the phantom truck glided past without a sound. The moment it cleared, his headlights fell back onto the road, and his blood froze. The figures were there again. Dozens, maybe hundreds, lining the trees, their bodies slick with rain, their heads tilted in that same grotesque unison. They stood shoulder to shoulder now, so close their outlines blurred into a wall of distorted flesh. Their eyeless faces turned toward him as one, their necks twitching in sharp, unnatural jolts. He felt their attention like a weight, crushing him from all sides. Eric's hands trembled violently on the wheel. He pressed the gas, but the car only groaned, refusing to pick up speed. Beside him, the seatbelt buckle snapped free with a metallic click. Slowly, as if savoring the moment, the figure in the passenger seat began to straighten, its head rising inch by inch toward him. He could hear the water dripping from its body onto the floor mats, each drop like a countdown. His brief hope dissolved, leaving only the choking truth: there was no way out. The seat creaked as the figure straightened, water streaming down its outline in steady rivulets. Eric kept his eyes fixed ahead, but peripheral glimpses betrayed him, a pale hand flexing against the dashboard, long fingers curling and uncurling, leaving slick trails of moisture across the plastic. The air grew heavy, pressing against his chest, making each breath a battle. His trembling lips whispered, "Stay, stay there," as though words could tether it in place. The car shuddered. Not from the road, but from something inside it. A low groan vibrated through the frame, rattling the mirrors and door panels, as if the very metal resisted carrying this passenger any farther. Eric's vision blurred, spots of white blooming in his periphery, and then the smell hit him, suffocating, rot and stagnant pond water fused into a choking cloud. His stomach lurched, bile stinging his throat. He gagged, one hand fumbling for the window switch, but it sparked uselessly beneath his touch. Then, cold. Not the kind of cold that raises gooseflesh, but a deeper chill, penetrating to the marrow. Something pressed against his forearm. Thin, impossibly cold fingers curling lightly over his skin, tightening with each breath he took. Eric screamed, jerking the wheel, the car swerving dangerously close to the trees. He yanked his arm free, skin burning where the grip had been, as if frostbite had bitten into his flesh. The figure's hand slid back, retreating only to rest once more on the dashboard, patient, waiting. The radio howled suddenly, no static this time, but the sound of rushing water, deafening, flooding the cabin. Eric's ears rang, eyes watering as he fought to control the car. He blinked, and the windshield wasn't glass anymore, it was liquid. A film of black, undulating water pressed against it from the outside, droplets crawling upward instead of down. Shapes moved within that watery wall, distorted, writhing, countless pale faces screaming silently. He blinked again, and the glass cleared, rain streaking normally once more. His chest hitched in ragged sobs. When he dared another glance, the passenger had moved. Its head no longer hung low. It was turned fully toward him now, neck cocked at an inhuman angle. The hollow sockets poured water that pattered rhythmically onto the seat, each drop louder than the last. Eric's pulse broke into chaos. He knew with dreadful certainty, if it reached for him again, if it climbed closer, he wouldn't survive the touch a second time. Eric's lungs heaved, clawing for air as though the oxygen itself had thinned. His trembling hand shot toward the door handle, nails scraping plastic as he yanked with every ounce of strength. It didn't budge. He pulled again, harder, screaming, the sound strangled by his raw throat. The lock clicked, but instead of opening, the handle fell limp beneath his grip. A sob tore free from his chest. Trapped. He was trapped in here with it. The figure moved again. Slowly, deliberately, it leaned forward. Water dripped from its hair and fat, steady drops onto the center console, splattering his thigh. Its body made no sound, no rustle of fabric or scrape of motion, just the steady groan of the car itself, as though its frame strained to contain them both. Eric shoved himself against the door, cheek pressed hard against the cold glass, eyes screwed shut. He whispered prayers he hadn't spoken since childhood, words breaking into panicked whimpers, the windshield fogged over in a single breath, so thick he couldn't see the road. He flicked the defroster, but instead of clearing, shapes emerged in the condensation, handprints. Dozens of them, some small as children's, some grotesquely elongated. Each pressed outward from the inside, as though the glass itself separated him from an unseen ocean of grasping bodies. His chest seized. He slammed the dashboard with his fist, screaming until his voice cracked, then, relief, or so he thought. The car stuttered, tires screeching as it rolled to a sudden stop. His headlights flickered back on, and there ahead, no more than 50 yards, stood a glowing sign. Fuel. Food. Open. A gas station, rising like a miracle out of the endless black. Eric's tears blurred his vision as he fumbled the ignition off, grabbing for the door again. This time it opened, swinging wide to the pounding rain. The cold night air washed over him, almost sweet in its freshness. He stumbled out, boots splashing into puddles, shoulders heaving with desperate relief. He had made it out, but when he turned, his stomach dropped into ice. The gas station was gone. The sign, the building, the glow, gone. Only trees, endless and wet, stood around him. His car idled quietly where he'd left it, headlights dimmed, passenger door hanging open. Inside, the figure no longer sat. The seat was empty. Eric froze in the rain, realization crashing down, it hadn't left with him. It was already behind him. The rain beat against Eric's skin in sheets, soaking him to the bone within seconds. He stumbled backward from the car, chest heaving, eyes scanning the dark wall of trees. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs felt leaden, sluggish, as though the forest floor had thickened into mud just to hold him in place. He forced one step, then another, finally breaking into a desperate sprint, crashing into the underbrush with wild, uneven strides. Branches tore at his clothes, whipping his face, drawing thin lines of blood across his cheeks. The beam of his headlights faded behind him, swallowed by fog, until there was no sign of the road at all. The forest was endless, uniform, every trunk identical, every shadow a clone of the one before. Eric's breath rasped loud in his ears, yet underneath it, he heard something else. Footsteps. Not his. A second rhythm pounding in the muck behind him, slow and deliberate, never hurried, but impossibly close no matter how far he ran. Stop, he screamed into the trees, his voice cracking. The sound came back warped, repeating faintly in the fog, as though dozens of unseen throats echoed his terror. He shoved forward, ignoring the burn in his lungs, until a clearing opened ahead. His heart leapt, an escape, maybe. But when he broke into it, his stomach dropped. The clearing wasn't empty. Figures stood shoulder to shoulder, a semicircle of pale bodies slick with rain, heads tilting in perfect unison as they faced him. Their eyeless sockets glistened, water spilling down their faces. Eric spun, sprinting back the way he came, but the trees seemed to have shifted. Branches arched lower, the ground sloped at angles that hadn't been there before. His foot caught on a root, sending him sprawling face first into the mud. Pain seared up his ribs, but before he could scramble to his feet, a shadow fell across him. He froze, cheek pressed to the wet earth, eyes wide. From the corner of his vision, he saw bare feet. Pale, waterlogged. Toes sinking into the mud beside his face. He forced himself upright, stumbling back on shaking legs. And there it was. The passenger. Standing in the rain as though it had always belonged here, its dripping head cocked at that grotesque angle. The sockets where eyes should have been stared straight through him, hollow and endless. It took one step forward, water streaming from its limbs, each movement deliberate, patient, inevitable. Eric's scream tore free, raw and animal, as he turned and ran blindly deeper into the forest, every step echoing with the knowledge that it would never stop following. Eric's lungs screamed, each breath tearing fire through his chest as he stumbled deeper into the woods. Mud sucked at his boots, trees clawed his arms, but he didn't stop, not until the forest itself forced him still. The ground dropped away beneath his feet, and he found himself teetering on the edge of a ravine. Rainwater cascaded down its sides, black and bottomless, a yawning mouth waiting to swallow him whole. Behind him, the forest whispered with the sound of approaching footsteps. Slow. Patient. Inescapable. He turned, mud splattering his face, and there it was. The passenger. No longer slumped, no longer half seen. It towered before him in full, its body bloated with water, skin stretched so thin the veins beneath pulsed faintly with each drip. Its hollow sockets poured rivulets of dark water, streaming endlessly, pooling at its feet. It tilted its head, the motion sharp and unnatural, and raised a hand toward him. Long fingers, skeletal and dripping, reached across the rain-heavy air as though to beckon him closer. No. Eric roared, the sound raw, torn from the last of his strength. He stumbled back a step toward the ravine's edge, arms flailing. You can't have me. His voice cracked, swallowed by thunder. He thought of his apartment back in town, the warm lamplight, the life he had walked away from for what should have been a simple drive. All of it felt impossibly far now, like a dream dissolving in the morning sun. The only reality was this: the figure, the rain, and the abyss yawning behind him. The passenger took another step. The forest shifted with it. Every tree seemed to lean closer, every shadow deepened. From the fog, the other figures emerged, countless eyeless bodies pressing in, surrounding the clearing. Their heads tilted in perfect unison, their bodies dripping and still. The air grew heavier, pressing down until Eric's knees buckled. His legs gave out, and he fell backward into the mud, chest heaving as tears streamed down his face. The passenger loomed above, hand lowering slowly, almost tenderly, until its fingers hovered just inches from his chest, and then, nothing. Silence. Eric blinked, rain still pouring down his face. The clearing was empty. No figures. No passenger. Only trees, endless and black, swaying gently in the storm. He scrambled to his feet, choking on relief, spinning in circles to make sure. Gone. All of it. A laugh bubbled out of him, cracked and desperate, echoing wildly in the forest. But as he turned toward what he thought was the road, his body froze. There, parked neatly between the trees, headlights glowing faintly through the rain, sat his car. Its driver's door hung wide open. The passenger seat was not empty. It never had been.